like to call the order of the Plan Commission meeting for August 3rd at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Commissioner Graff. Here. Commissioner Oliver.
Here.
Alderman Madden.
Here.
Commissioner Gazana.
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster.
Here.
Commissioner Bartlett.
Here.
Mayor Petfalski.
Present.
Planner Trezbitowski.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Friday, July 30th.
Thank you. Consent business, we have none. New business for consideration, Resolution PC 051 2021, recommendation to the Common Council to amend the zoning map and 2020 comprehensive plan of the City of Muskego for the Kirkland Crossing development for the properties located in the northeast and southeast quarter of Section 4 and the northwest quarter of Section 3, tax key numbers 2170.991, 2173.998, 2173.997, and 2176.999. Adam.
Do we want to make a motion?
Yeah, I guess we'll get it on the floor first. Could I get a motion for this on the floor?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. No, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. So the petitioner is submitting a rezoning request to rezone 4 parcels that lie between Martin Drive and College Avenue, just east of Park Arthur, for a potential future subdivision. The rezoning request is to change the existing parcel, which is predominantly zoned RSE and a portion RS1, to a planned development district, and that planned development district would be based upon the RS2 suburban residence district. And they're asking for a 2020 comprehensive map update from low density residential to medium density residential. As far as the land use request change goes, as was stated, the current land use is low density. The proposal from the developer's medium density. This is something that staff, as part of an upcoming 2035 comprehensive plan amendment update, was going to be requesting for this general area anyway, due to the discovery of sewer serviceability for this area. But the developer is kind of ahead of where we are, so that's why they're requesting it at this time. As far as that zoning goes, the RS2 district that is being requested is a single, or the base district of RS2 for the planned development is a single family only zoned district. The RS2 typically requires lot sizes of 20,000 square feet with city sewer, and normally has a minimum average width requirement of 110 feet. As part of the planned development, the developer is asking for lot width to be reduced to 90 feet on some lots and 100 feet on other lots, which are specifically identified in the concept plan. As part of the planned development, they are not asking for any kind of lot size reduction, and they are not asking for any kind of density bonus. When it comes to location of possible future homes, they are asking as part of the planned development to have some reductions or alterations to some of the setbacks and offsets. Typically, the front is required to be 40, and they're asking for 30 feet. One side is normally 15, with the other side being 20, and they're asking for 12 and a half on each side. And the rear is normally 20 feet, and they're asking to go to 25 feet for a rear offset. So that's one of the planned development items that they're asking for. As far as open space goes, the RS2 district typically requires 15,000 square foot lots, or 75% of the lot area to remain as open space. They're asking for that to be left at 70% open space required. As was noted, sewer serviceability was discovered as being available on this property. It's something the city did not previously think was possible via our engineering staff, but due to some sewer study that's kind of always being looked at, but they're specifically doing some updates, it was discovered that gravity sewer could work to this area. So as part of the proposal, the developer would be proposing to extend sewer, which isn't really too far right now, but through the development, and then there would be a stub provided to the far eastern part of the property where you see a future possible road stub. And then they're going to be extending water from down Martin Drive. Right now it's closer to the Chamberlain Hill subdivision. They're going to be extending water up through Martin Drive, and then same thing through this development, stubbing also to that eastern property stub. As far as road connections go, they're proposing a connection off of Martin Drive and a connection off of College. As far as the connection off of College, that's a county highway, so they have talked with the county, met with the county regarding county concerns and requirements. And my understanding is the county has required a traffic impact analysis for the College entrance, so that's something that would have to be done as part of the development. As far as other access, the far eastern cul-de-sac, kind of northeastern cul-de-sac on that plan, is also near College, but the county wasn't willing to allow another access point given the proximity to the curvature of the road. So there's an emergency access that is shown off of the eastern cul-de-sac bulb to allow another way to get in for emergency purposes if needed. As part of this proposal in general too, looking at some of the numbers and densities, they're proposing, it's a total of 108 lots. 107 lots are actually on the subdivision plat, and 1 lot would be split previously or earlier as part of a certified survey map, which was one of the original farmhouses along Martin Drive. Total development area, about 21.2 acres. Over that 108 lot density equates to a density of 1.18 units per acre when you figure in the open space, the preservation areas, ponds, wetlands, and so on. As far as surrounding zoning right now, there is, municipal zoning for a park to the west of this site. There is RS2 zoning across the street to the south. There are some RSE areas in RS1 to the east and south. And if you go much further to the east, there's some light industrial when you start abutting the industrial park. New Berlin is located across the street to the north as part of this request to kind of give you some proximity here. As far as the public hearing goes, there were a handful of comments that were provided in the packet, and the audio and video were available on the website from the public hearing. Staff wanted to kind of just maybe summarize a couple of them. There were some comments that were heard over and over, but look at the packets for more detail. Definitely some concerns with having a bunch of new residents abutting a property, concern with trespass and garbage, concern with possible flooding. There was talk about concern with traffic on College as well as Martin. There was some questions and concerns raised regarding where utilities were being extended to or not. There was some questions or some talk about the former path that was at one time thought about on Martin that wasn't originally approved. There was some additional talk about gas being extended, gas service, natural gas service. There was comments relating to the density and if the density was appropriate. There were some comments about the density being too high and wanting to match other homes in the neighborhood. There was talk about looking at the current comprehensive plan and it being appropriate for the area. There was some comments relating to what percentage of the breakdown of land uses are in the city, which I can talk about in a minute, but there's talk about higher percentage of medium and high density, lower percentages of low density in the city. Talk about overcrowding in the schools, being incompatible with the trail system, especially with the denial on Martin. Talk about wetlands and can they be preserved or developed in planned developments or not. There's some talk about Native Americans that used to be in this area and protecting the woodlands. Let's see here, I'm trying to cover some of the bulk ones if you haven't looked at it in detail. I said more comments about traffic and access and number of vehicles that could be put onto the two roads. So based upon the bulk of those comments, here's kind of some, responses or answers I think a lot of residents wanted to hear. As far as one thing, when it relates to anything out unsightly in a yard, if there was concerns about things in people's backyards, city has very specific rules about outdoor storage that are easily enforceable by the city and or HOAs, the homeowners associations. Usually have some pretty strong rules on those too and very powerful enforcement tools over those. As far as traffic on College goes, as I mentioned, traffic impact analysis would be happening by the county. We did bring up some concerns regarding we were alerted to some differing speed limit signs on the roadway. So the county has that in their attention and has that in their knowledge base, and they can look to address. The county already did require only the one access to the far west on College because of safety concerns, and that's why there's only the emergency access on the east. As far as grading and runoff goes, that's something that the developer's engineer will have to look at as part of their detailed engineering plans, as well as the city will look to make sure that any drainage patterns are maintained, make sure nothing is blocked, and that if any kind of drain tile is encountered, there are provisions that require the developer to reconnect or reestablish those, as to not just plug them or abandon them. They have to basically make sure they still flow. As far as utilities go, like I said, sewer and water, we brought to the development and through it. The developer also mentioned that there will be electric, gas, cable, internet, those things through the development. The city cannot require the developer to go outside their development boundaries for those, but if some of the residents in the area wanted to connect to gas or any of those other services, they might be significantly closer now, which might make that cost either nothing or more reasonable for the homeowners. So the homeowners could talk to the utility company about those once those utilities are installed. There was a question regarding how the utilities are paid for. The developer is responsible for the extension cost to and through their development, so there is no general taxpayer funding for that. And then any upsizing that the city would require for future general growth, that is something that the city would look into entering an agreement for reimbursing just for the oversizing, which is typically done for any development with oversizing. As far as the lot size go, there were some questions about the lots being too small compared to the area. Using Marlin Meadows, which is just across the street as an example, Marlin Meadows is the same RS2 zoning that they're asking for here, so it's the same minimum lot size requirement. And actually, kind of looking at some of the numbers, there's actually a little bit, these lots are actually, from a density standpoint, a little less dense than you find in Marlin Meadows across the street because of the large amount of open spaces. As far as RS2 zoning goes, RS2 zoning is the most commonly used single-family zoning district that we have in the city for sewer districts. 29.7% of all residential districts in the city, which is the single largest percentage, are all RS2, which is what the base they're using here. And 15.8% of all zoning districts in the city as a whole, this is the largest single amount of zoning, which would be also RS2, which the plan development's based off of. As far as plan developments go, the wetlands are allowed to be, or required to be, kept in outlots, not in private lots for a plan development. So that's one of the benefits of having a plan development over straight traditional zoning. If there was not a plan development, there could be lots or wetlands on the back of lots, along with the wooded areas. We would try to keep as much of the wooded areas the development team did. On the outlot areas, there are some woodlands that will have some minimal impact, but the bulk of the wooded areas are preserved, which the plan development gives us a lot more teeth over because we can require more of those preservation restrictions than if it was traditional straight zoning. As far as Martin Drive goes, the Martin Drive access point will be designed to meet all city standards, so the city engineering department will go through all the applicable standards for that driveway or intersection approach. There will obviously be new traffic generated with any kind of development here, whether it's this lot size or something different. As part of it, though, we're looking at a street plan. Martin Drive is defined as an arterial street, so it is meant to collect street from neighborhoods. So, Martin Drive is functioning exactly as it's intended per the street plan. As far as any possible road expansions to Martin Drive, there's nothing proposed at this time, but obviously that's something that our engineering department would look at as needs would warrant down the road, just like we would with any other road anywhere in the city. As far as the path that was mentioned, yes, there was a path proposed at one time or talked about on Martin Drive. At that time, it wasn't approved. That's something that maybe could be brought up again in the future if there's need for it down the road. And then there was a comment regarding the 2020 comprehensive plan having a reference to this area being a possible expansion of Park Arthur area. In talking with administration to city, talking with planning staff, development staff, engineering, and park staff, because there is a large area of Park Arthur that's undeveloped right now, and that seems to meet what seems to be the future programming needs for that park. There didn't see a need to look to purchase this, especially at the development type prices that the land was going for and not kind of conservation or park prices. But as a condition of approval per the comp plan, this will have to go to the Park and Conservation Committee to formally make that decision, because that's how it was listed in the comp plan. So yeah, I guess one other thing to mention is just kind of talking about that plan development again. The plan development district is something that's helped to encourage creativity and flexibility within the development while working with and possibly protecting where possible the specific features of the land. So like the woodlands, the wetlands, things like that. There will be, I'm sure, some more fine tuning with the impact to the wetlands and the woodlands. The woodlands, the wetlands aren't being impacted at all. That will work with the development on as part of the preliminary plat and the technical review on the city's side. But as an example, that if a developer were still to consider RS1 or RSC, which are all zoning districts, are all still in the area, that definitely still could be developed. So it's not a matter of this not being developed if the rezoning doesn't happen. And as part of that, if they didn't do a planned development, there would be a lot more lots that would be into the woods and into the wetlands. And even though we can put preservation restrictions on them, we've learned over time that when these features are on private lots, there's a lot more chance that they slowly get accidentally filled or cut down, which I use the word accidentally loosely. Where if they're in an outlot, there's a lot more preservation, and the HOA has a lot of teeth behind that also. So yeah, that's kind of a rundown of the proposal. One thing to note too, the rezoning and the comp plan amendment, the documents are all listed to be subject to final plat approval and recording a developer's agreement. So those two things have to happen for the zoning to formally kick in.
Thank you. I think before we start our discussions, we have one request to speak, and I'm sure the developer will want to add something too. So should we listen to them first and then have our discussion? Perfect. Joseph Boschert, would you like to?
Would you
Just
want
make
my
sure the
address?
microphone's on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you want the address and all that?
Yes.
Joseph Boschert, W170S6768 Timber Court. I spoke at the last hearing. I'm not going to reiterate everything. I'm just going to touch on some of the main points that I think are relevant for the Plan Commission. One key thing I think is that we ought to follow the 2020 plan as adhered to, as provided, as adopted. The 2035 plan is incomplete and has not been given full public feedback. I don't think it can be relied upon. So I would prefer that we rely upon those plans that have been approved and exist. Another thing is, if you look at the 2020 plan, you see on the land use section, you see a nice border between Muskego and New Berlin. And this helps serve as a transition border, helps avoid massive and endless subdivisions without any separation. I would propose that we can continue and keep forward with that separation, those things that make us unique as Muskego. As to the RS2 designation, I would ask, what benefit does it have for this city? What do the citizens of this city get for that extra density? I don't know if I've received a clear answer to that. Again, Marlin Meadows was used as comparable. I would argue that everything east is also a comparable, and everything east of that proposed development is RS1. Certainly Marlin Meadows is RS2, but everything east is RS1. I am not one to oppose development. I think development is great. I want to have a balanced approach to development. And I think that we need to figure out as a community what that appropriate development is. Now, earlier I got numbers from the city. I added up all the different residential types and bucketed them into high, medium, or low density. When you take all that acreage and you divide it by the total residential acreage, that number, when you group everything, medium and high density amounts to 75%. The remaining 25% is low density. I do not consider that a healthy balance. The other question is Muskego will get developed. So over the next 30 to 40 years, as we continue to develop south and westward, will we bleed a deep yellow, an RS2 designation throughout the entire city? Or are we going to have balance in our community? Will some things be RS1, RSE, RS1? I know the traffic thing has come up many times before. I would ask that we have a traffic analysis prior to rezoning. There was mention of the trail system. Again, that continues to be an issue. I guess the last thing I'll ask is, comment I'll make is that I think the interest of the development needs to be weighed against the highest and best use of the land and maintaining Muskego's rural atmosphere and quality of life. Those are the two goals. I don't understand how changing this designation from RS1 to RS2 achieves those ends. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on this issue? Would you like to speak, Mr. Carity? Sure.
Bill, excuse me. My name is Bill Carity. Ryan Jansen and I are working on this together. I represent his interest. And we attended that public hearing, of course, last week. And virtually everything that you heard here was accurate. Those comments were made. I think that maybe I'd like to focus mostly on what I call our central park. It's right in the middle of this development parcel, and we were informed early on that it was the city's goal to maintain that park as much as humanly possible. There was other things that were told to us, but it was clear to us that it was carried on your land use plan as high priority conservation area, and that when we looked at the overall development, it became glaringly obvious that to do this in a planned unit development and do it as sensitively as possible to respect that wooded area, and it is a wooded area. It's
Bill,
clear.
I don't mean to interrupt, but can you talk into the microphone just so everyone can hear you? Thanks.
I'm sorry. It's heavily wooded, but it's clear that we visited it with your city forester, with Tom Zagar, and it's clear that it had been pastured in the past. There's a fair amount of understory and undergrowth that has occurred around some very nice mature trees. And it is our goal to preserve that as much as possible. You may notice that there are 3 of the wetlands that we have on our development parcel are located in that wooded area. And the reason for that is because there are low spots in that wooded area, and that it's very likely that that area had never been tilled in the past because it was simply low, and that it was very difficult for a farmer to, say, till it, whether it was 50 years ago or 75 years ago. So it became what it is right now. This whole parcel would be much easier if the good Lord had made it a flat cornfield that didn't have any wetlands. But as they say, it is what it is, and we're trying to work around that. You may notice that a lot of our lots, and we have asked for some variances from RS-2, not on the lot size, but you may notice that virtually all the lots that back up to those wooded areas are long and deep. And the reason for that is that we did, Adam requested that we keep it RS-2, 20,000 square footers minimum. And so our intent is to create a bunch of preservation areas to the rear of those lots. Our intent is to make the homes come 10 feet further towards the front, so that the homes wouldn't bump up against the wooded areas. And we are preserving all of the wetlands. You may notice that we have some stormwater management ponds that are in that area, and we're going to carefully create those around the wooded areas. And the reason for those stormwater management ponds being there is because they want to be there. I mentioned to you that those are low areas, and that the stormwater management always occurs on the downslope side of a development. So the vast majority of our reasons here for creating the subdivision the way that we did is to preserve that park area, and it frankly is the reason for the PD that we're requesting. And because the PD is really designed to give you flexibility whenever you have outstanding environmental features like what this is. And So we are requesting this to be done in a planned development, and we think that it is a reasonable use to request that it be medium density residential, because we could have done it as the RS-1 and 30,000 square footers, larger lots, but we also could have, and this isn't intended to be any kind of threat, it's just merely a comment. We could have backed those lots up into the woods, and frankly, as Adam has suggested, it just compromises the woods. It's not the best way to preserve green space. We want that woods to be enjoyed by all of our future residents, and that is the major thrust around this whole thing. I'll just make one comment, and I hope this isn't taken the wrong way. You look at, for instance, a timber court. That was developed in the woods, and that's what we're not doing. We're not removing trees to develop homes. We are doing some stormwater management, and we are doing a road crossing that is required. We've visited with Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning on this, and we're well, I guess I'm repeating myself, trying to do it as sensitively as possible. Yes, there will be increased traffic. There'll have to be a traffic impact analysis. The majority of that will very likely, at least during peak hours, go out to College Avenue because it's a direct artery right out to the expressway. And that is a county I've mentioned before that we have visited with the county. So essentially, there's reasoning behind all of our lot sizes, the geometry to the lots, and it is very much configured around that woods. And frankly, to our, also to a neighbor who spoke the other evening, notice how we're trying to do long, deep lots. We'll do preservation areas on an adjoining property to the property to the east to preserve a tree line that exists there as well. So those are my general comments, and hope you consider them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, who wants to start?
I could start if you.
All right.
If I may. So, Jeremy Bartlett, I actually live on College Avenue. I live 2 properties to the east of this parcel. I guess I'll start out by saying, generally speaking, I expect that at some point this would be developed. I expected that Muskego is growing very fast, and we don't have a lot of vacant land anymore, and so. These are beautiful parcels, and I assume that someday, at some point, this would happen. So that's on a personal level. I'm a little bit distraught by the fact that it's happening because I own 10 acres. I'm definitely in a rural area. It's a beautiful piece of land. I bought it 8 years ago. I've put a couple $100,000 into my property, so I'd like to preserve that. But at the same time, a developer comes along, they do have rights as well. They're spending money. We sit on a planning commission. Our job is to make sure that development happens properly and that everyone's rights are respected. So on the general merits of if this subdivision was located on the other side of town, would I see issues with it? From the way that the lots are laid out, I actually think it's a good plan. Where I do have a few concerns because I know the lay of the land, and Adam, you briefly mentioned it now, but I don't think anyone's investigated it far enough, is the water issues out here. I know that the fields are being drained off and there's drain tile. I also know that along College Avenue, there's some serious water problems, and only a portion of this land is feeding to that problem along College, but it's a serious problem that if it isn't addressed with this development, it's going to lead to some major concerns. So, and I understand that that'll be engineering and their responsibility to look at that in complete detail. The other big thing that I have is I don't know if we've had a subdivision that's come in that's had this level of wooded conservancy. And I guess I'd have a question for the developer on how that's going to be managed and whose responsibility that will be. For instance, when the ash borer beetle came through a few years ago, we have now thousands of dead trees in this area. And, you know, if you own a property, you're managing that. But in this instance, how is that managed? You know, something will happen again. You'd hate to see a dry season where a fire started and ran through the neighborhood. I mean, you know, these things need to be managed to some degree. So is that in the subdivision bylaws? How is that handled? I know that would be to me, just something that we should address. The other big thing along College Avenue, it hasn't really been, I'd say because it's a rural area, College Avenue, I'm still on propane. We Energies refuses to bring gas in unless you get, I think it's 7 other neighbors to come along on the gas delivery, and so far that has never been the case. So if we're gonna go to this level now of development, we really need to look at utilities along the main thoroughfares in this area. And then I guess lastly, I agree with all the public comments regarding College Avenue and traffic. I have a difficulty getting out of my own driveway, and that's only going to get worse with this. So if we can't find a way to at least analyze that and address it a little bit better, and whether that's a speed limit reduction or something, but at 40 miles an hour, I would say daily I have cars that come out 60, and I have a hard time getting out of my driveway without somebody running me over. So, and I'm a pretty aggressive driver myself. So I guess that's my general comments.
To tag on to that, relative to the traffic study that the county is going to plan, how does that mesh with, or doesn't it mesh with the decision we're going to make about rezoning? Is that just kick forward, that study kick forward and becomes potentially an impediment, or potentially not in the future? Because if you look at the comments generally, I see traffic as one, and you just brought it up yourself. And personally, I see it when I'm on that road as well. So how does that interplay with the decision we're going to make relative to zoning?
So, I mean, traffic impact analysis is usually focusing mostly on the intersection itself. And it's not a matter of if it can work, it's a matter of what has to be done to make it to the level of safety the county wants to see. In the case of, probably not here, but in the case of really like big things, you know, could it go as far as stop signs or traffic lights, which I wouldn't guess here, but that's up to the county. You know, it can sometimes say that's what's needed.
Okay, so
but most cases it's things like excel lanes, decel lanes, bypass lanes. Those are real common standard ones.
which then are the responsibility of the developer to design into this plan?
Mm-hmm, correct. Yep. Any kind of improvement that the development warrants, for lack of a better term, that, you know, their intersections that's theirs. Yeah. So if there would be something that the county says they need to do as part of that analysis, the developer would be required to do that.
Good example, that might be Coles when it came through on Moreland. That intersection had to have extra lanes and essentially rebuilt all on the developer of Coles.
All on their dime?
Yes.
Okay. To tag on again, but to change topics, relative to utilities, you mentioned in your summary that gas could potentially be brought in based on the new owner's onus to contact the utility companies. That doesn't sound, for as large a development that this is, it doesn't sound logical to me that this would be a massive amount of utility requirements. And I'm a little bit surprised, or at least I don't understand, if that's the case, that isn't laid onto the developer to have put in place long before the first lot's for sale.
So it will be put in place within their development, but we as a city have no ability to make them go outside of their development. So yes, they will pay, and I don't know how it works, if they pay We Energies or how that works, but Bill, you guys might know, but either way, if they in theory didn't want to even have gas here, if they wanted their residents to be on propane tanks, they could. No one forces gas service. It's not a city utility, so we have no say over it.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they wouldn't, residents would not want to have a propane tank on in a neighborhood like this, but they're choosing to run it within, so everyone in it will be served. My comment was more so if I live across the street on College or a few houses down the road, we can't make the developer run it there to some other people outside the development. So, but within this development will be fully there. But if I'm a neighbor that lives to the north of College or east or west or wherever direction, and I want it and I don't have it, it's much closer now. And where right now it might be a mile to run it, maybe now it's only a couple hundred feet to run it.
Okay.
So We Energies might be more apt to do it or do it at a lower cost. But like even the developer will pay, I believe, to have it run even through their own development. So it will be put in before the first house will be built. The utilities are done before they can ever build.
So I understand now. Thank you. Okay.
The emergency road onto College Avenue is ingress egress, and that's to be maintained how?
So we don't, the engineered details got to be worked out, but it's usually when we have these 1 lane wide enough that our fire department's comfortable with it. Usually has a gate or some kind of bollard breakaway or removable or something so that normal cars can't drive on it because it's meant only for the emergency purpose. And then as part of like a plat requirement, when we get to the final plat, we can have certain requirements on there. One of our requirements will state, must be maintained and fully accessible at all times of the year, meaning that, someone in the neighborhood, whether they hire a company, whether a local neighbor does it, whatever, they have to keep it, plowed or snow blowed or whatever, accessible at all times. No different than like some of our schools have some emergency driveways, same thing, they got to keep it maintained. And so that if fire, police, or paramedics need to get in there anytime, they can do so at any moment.
And the one road onto Martin and one road onto College, that's the maximum allowed by the county? Is that why that's a emergency, not another thoroughfare?
Martin, they only have a certain amount of frontage on Martin, so that's just all that they, Martin has very limited frontage for the development, so there's only space for that. And then as far as on College goes, that's where the county has sole say over. The city has no input. But, and when they talked with the county, because of that curve, which no one's going to deny that curve's tricky curve there. They placed it in a location that the county was most comfortable with, based upon what they had to work with, based upon vision angles and traffic patterns and curvature of the road. And like I said, the county traffic experts are the ones that analyze that.
Only allowing the one on College versus two. Thank you.
Further questions, comments?
Just one more, Mayor.
Yes.
On the density, you said you had looked at the RS1 versus the RS2. How many less homes would be in the RS1 with the 30,000 versus the 20,000?
So it's hard to do without physically doing a layout, because of things like roadways and stormwater and whatnot. I tried to kind of play with some numbers. Taking what I just did was, there's no exact science, like I said, shy of laying it out. So I took the total development and I even subtracted out all of the wetland and woodland features because we know what that acreage is, and then divided it by 30,000. So that's what the RS1 is versus the 20,000. And I came up with a number of 93 lots. Now I'm sure that's a little high just because of the sake of where the roads would actually fit and how do the widths work. Like I said, there's no magical way to look at the widths shy of laying it out. So it's not a question of, is development going to happen here? I think anyone would be naive to say development's not going to happen here. It's a question of just what kind of development, what style, what layout, what size, whatever that might be. And I think that's important to think about when there are comments like traffic. Like we know there's going to be more traffic. There's no question, and we can do our best to design it to try to accept and work with that traffic. Our engineering staff has had quite a few conversations on this topic, and a big thing on the engineering side that I've been advised from our engineers is, there's speed and there's the issue of like congestion, two very separate topics. And that one of the comments we've heard in our office a lot has been more of speed issues than anything. And from an engineering principle standpoint, it's not uncommon, this came directly from our city engineer, is the idea that when you have a little more traffic, which some roads have a little more traffic, we're not talking traffic jams, we're just talking more than one car every, couple seconds or minutes or whatever. Having that traffic inherently slows traffic down. When there is more traffic, just think about it on a highway, and now that we're not comparing this to highway, but the idea of when there is more you have to be watching for, cars are inherently going to go slower. So having some traffic on the road is not frowned upon by engineers. If anything, it helps sometimes manage some of those speeds because people have to be more alert and have to pay more attention.
So I assume they've done a cost study on the difference of these 16 to 18 additional homes or less homes, based on that, and their ROI that they're looking for is all part of the relevant. I mean, they're trying to make as much money as they can, obviously, in the development. But has that been brought to you as just an RS2 or an RS1?
No. So when the developer talked with us, they kind of had an idea in mind. There was some talks of, and a lot of developers with the plan development even try to get lot reductions. Like, it's very common, if you were to look at all of our plan developments throughout the city, and there's 50 some of them, most of them ask for lot reductions. They haven't here. If they were to go down to like 18,000 square foot lots, which is, we've seen that in some of our RS2 plan developments, maybe they gain a little bit more. One of the staff suggestions, just based upon what we've seen in some other plan developments lately, is once you start going under 20, number one, it's hard to meet the standards that you see on new developments nowadays, because people, might like their ranch. They might want their side entry garage with 3 cars that has, inherently side entry is a bigger driveway. Maybe they want, a backyard feature, whether it's a pool or deck or gazebo or whatever, that all those things take up space that when you start getting too far under 20, it gets hard sometimes to have enough space to really do that. People are building something nice. They want to be able to have some nice amenities with it. And why not give them that space? So staff was suggesting that they hold to the 20, not go down to 18, which a lot of developers or engineers look to do in these RS2 plan developments. I did not ever see an RS1 straight layout. I know there was one concept very, very early on, before we even knew the sewerability, gravity sewerability was an item. There was a concept, not for this much land, but using kind of the far northeastern area. The developer did kind of have an original plan of doing a more rural style development and possibly much bigger lots. But once again, on the topic of plan developments, the issue with that was all the lots went into the woods, because without a plan development, we don't have the ability to prevent that. So, half your lot was open, half your lot was wooded, and we could still require preservation in the woods. But again, there's a lot more control when it's in an outlot communally owned or neighborhood owned, rather than if it's just the back of my lot and I'm in the back cutting down what I want. And no one really knows the difference. So, like I said, the plan development really gives us the ability to do a lot more preservation and have a lot more authoritative preservation that really actually has some meaning to it.
Which is more of when the developer came up with this plan, is what he was shooting for, trying to match what at least my administration was looking for with trying to preserve the wetlands and woodlands. As you see, if Adam's numbers are fair, we're talking 15 to 20 lot difference only. Yes, that adds up at probably 100,000 plus per lot, but there's a lot more cost involved in designing it this way. It's more of, do we want, as a community, drive by and see those woods get carved up and wetlands and private property that eventually, you talk to people that have wetlands on their lands, and 15 years later, they're not as big as they were when they first bought them. So.
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing I think, going to 20,000 square feet versus 30,000 square feet, obviously the bigger the lot, the more expensive is the lot, and technically probably the more expensive the home. I think with this development, it makes it a little bit more affordable for people to invest in a lot here and build a home. I'm sure these are not going to be low-income homes. On the other hand, you want them to be affordable for our average resident that wants to either move up or move into Muskego. So I think it's a good plan. I was a little concerned initially when I saw a reduction of the lot frontage from 110 to 90 linear feet, but reducing the sides to 15 or 12 and a half feet still allows a ranch home, 3-car garage to sit on the property with reasonable room around the home.
Thank you. Anyone else?
One thing that's probably just kind of stemming on your comment that's worth noting is, when you look at some of these sizes too, we talk about, 20,000, you got to understand the minimum. They have quite a few cul-de-sacs, and cul-de-sac lots inherently lead to a little bit bigger lots sometimes, just because of the inherent pie shape and kind of how much land you have left. I mean, just at a quick glance here, there's a 32,000, 35,000, 30,000, 30,000. I mean, there are, 41,000, 26,000. So it's not like every lot is 20,000 and that's it. I don't know if there was an average calculated or not, but either way, when you do look at it, you definitely see that, 20 is a minimum, but that doesn't mean there's not much greater ones also.
Mr. Buckmaster, you look like you have something important to say.
No, I don't know if it's important, but
Or just something to say in general.
yeah. So I would add just my concerns with the traffic and then the water. Those are things I'm not really aware of, but I don't travel that area too often, so I would take that to heart. Regarding the comp plan and stuff, so we are under the 2020 comp plan, and I know quite a bit about that plan. So, but a plan is as good probably the first year it's absolute after it's passed, and as time goes on, new things happen, new things come to light, and that 2020 plan was basically designed with various chapters that allow it to be changed if certain aspects are that the city wants, they get. And wetlands and conservation is part of that. That was a major role that the 2020 comp plan committee played. The city was surveyed twice. And Eileen's aware of this way back then. Adam too, I bet, with Jeff. And I mean, the response was, I looked at my notes, was, roughly 80% wants to preserve wetland and conservancy. And that's really the real atmosphere and quality of life. So as time goes on, I don't have an issue with changing the plan as long as we're getting something for it. I think in here we are. And as far as the 2035 plan, that'll be passed. And I'm sure down the road that's fine. But we're so far from the 2020 plan that was passed in 2008. So a lot's changed, and a lot of these subdivisions around here, Copper Oaks and stuff, weren't even around. And when the comp plan committee, I looked at Adam's notes, when we met, we did not know what to do with this area. And the overall reaction was to make it RS1 because we had no information regarding sewer. And so we thought we would default to low density and then go on from that point. So, as Jerry Hulbert would always say, development follows the sewer, always does. And so I don't have an issue with the comp plan change and the zoning change. I do like the fact that we're at 20,000, so thank you for that. That is exactly, if we get into an RS3 type, exactly what we try to avoid, and so thank you for that. But so I have no objection to this other than the traffic, and I honestly don't know how to deal with the water, but there must be some way that our engineers can work out a retention or a detention area there to.
Yeah, I know that their development team, just like any developers take some risk, and they've already started to look at a lot of the engineering. That's how they kind of know how the ponds are shaping up in size. So I know there's already been a lot of look on the developer's engineering side of things. And yeah, these comments will all be passed to our engineering team. And when they look at drainage, they're not just looking at this lot or these 4 lots like it's its own little bubble. I mean, the big thing that they're going to look at is in the whole area. Where does water come from? They're going to look at the site. You can see a lot from aerial photos when it comes to wet areas and drainage patterns. They have a whole slew of things that they're going to make sure that things are better. That's the whole idea of stormwater management. It's supposed to be better than when it started, whether it's better water quality, lower water quantity. Yes, you have more impervious surface, but that's what the ponds are compensating for, and then some. But they definitely would be looking at all that stuff, and I know in talks with the developer, they're well aware of the idea of drain tile being out there and investigating that as much as possible and making sure that during the construction, anything that would, be encountered would be dealt with appropriately.
And passing something like this with these concerns doesn't make it like, okay, we passed it, they can't take care of this, it's just going to be bad. We have very stringent local stormwater ordinances that will have to be met regardless of what we passed here, and state ones as well. So I'm comfortable that once we do or don't give this approval here and it gets approved by council, the stormwater will be taken care of, or their development won't happen. It's not like they're going to be able to do the development and do it haphazardly.
Well, I think that's good that these concerns are raised, Mayor, the traffic, the water, and certainly the RS2 density should give, the developer should have the means to address, that in that case too. Yeah, other than that, I have no issues with this, and I'm fine. Oh, I did have one question though. We haven't done a PD or a PUD in a while. When we do the retention and detention ponds, are those built into or written into the developer's agreement that there's an association that forms that manages that? Is that true?
So they'll have their own separate stormwater maintenance and management agreements. It's a plan and agreement that they'll work with our engineering team to produce. I think there's some templates we like to use.
Okay.
So no, there'll be a separate recorded document, separate from the developer's agreement, that will talk about long-term maintenance and that it defaults to the developer. And then eventually when the developer's gone, it's either developer HOA that goes to eventually the homeowners. And I think the way the plat will even be listed is it talks about any kind of maintenance and responsibility for all outlots falls on a prorated share of all homeowners. So if there's 107 lots in the plat, every owner owns 107th of the outlot. So like if the city ever had to get in to do something, which we really don't ever have to do, they'd have the ability to assess each of those homeowners to do it properly. But that's how we have that agreement that outlines what's expected of the HOA ahead of time.
All right, thank you.
Which I guess we'll ask the question of the development team that Commissioner Bartlett had asked, what will be the plan for the long-term upkeep of those woodlands? Is that going to be built into your HOA, or what's your plans on that?
Yes, it will be jointly owned by all of the lot owners and incorporated into an owners association. And with regard to trees and maintenance of those trees and emerald ash borer, we will be removing all the dead trees. And I'm not going to say we're going to manicure it like it's a park, but it will remain. And we're going to actually look after the health and welfare of the more specimen trees that are in there. So that's all going to be done in the front end by us as developers, and then ultimately maintained through a homeowners association.
And in the city, having a city forester on staff who's a great resource for groups like this, I know Bill and Ryan have met with Tom Zager out there already, and that's something that he can help assist if there's any questions on how to word something, or good techniques or protocol to use to do enhance the wooded areas, as well as if the HOA ever has questions down the road too. It's not uncommon for them to reach out to him for some guidance.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Bartlett? Thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to Resolution PC 053-2021, approval of a preliminary plot for Kirkland Crossing subdivision located between Martin Drive and College Avenue. Tax key numbers the same as the previous resolution.
Second.
Discussion.
Not much else I need to add at all. Same idea. Only a couple things that we have as conditions of approval. We do talk about that. One thing we've done in other more recent developments we've had really good success with is adjacent to any wetland areas that are either right by lots, or even for the case of some of the wooded areas on the lots, is possibly doing like a split rail fence. It might not be a solid fence, but maybe even breaks in it. Just kind of helps to be a delineator for the owners down the road who might not know about all the nitty-gritty preservation, even though we try to provide it to them and the developer will. Just serves as a nice aesthetic to kind of help understand, hey, this is an area that, yeah, you can go in, you can walk in it, but it helps them understand it's a little bit more of a no-touch zone. We've had really good luck with that, so that's something we've really been carrying through. So that's in the resolution. And then one of the things that we'll look at in a little more detail with the development team and staff is just trying to, again, that some of these lots that have the woodlands on the very backs of them, trying to preserve them as much as possible. That if they can be completely untouched, we're going to want to see that. And there are obviously some lots that will have some impact minimally, but the development team has also talked about minimizing the pond impact as much as possible. So we'll continue to fine tune that as part of the technical review with the pre-plat.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the preliminary plot? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to Resolution PC 054, 2021, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for a Wendy's restaurant located at South 64 West 15924 Commerce Center Parkway, tax key number 2169.999.010.
Move to approve.
Second.
Before we start discussion, I just want to disclose, I mentioned it to the city attorney, Bridgman Foods is a customer of mine. Not as major of one as they used to be. Since I've been in office, I don't do a ton with them, but I still do work with them. If there's any discomfort in this, just let me know and I will hand the gavel over to Alderman Madden.
So proposal here is a building site and operation plan amendment. Really just the item that the plan commission is reviewing for is the exterior changes to convert from the Burger King, which closed down a while ago, converting it to a new Wendy's. So it's good to see this building get another life to it, which has a lot of life left in it. Really, they're just looking at doing some upgrades, replacing some materials, painting some materials, kind of redoing some of their more iconic Wendy features and taking away some of the former iconic Burger King features. Nothing by any means out of the norm. Will fit well with the existing architecture of the building. They work with staff to kind of get this to a good point, and there wasn't really a lot we had to worry about. They will make sure all signage meets all of our signage requirements as far as percentages goes. A few things we have noted in the resolution is that any existing proposed or altered mechanical units, rooftop AC units, any of that kind of stuff does have to be screened. It was already, but maybe they need to move something with the new project. But if anything would be exposed and be visible, will have to screen it. Just notes that any kind of area, a surface of the building that's patched or repaired must match exactly the adjacent material color, whether it's brick or siding or roofing or whatever. We don't expect any problems with that, but just a note we've learned from past projects is something good to require. And then the developers noted, the applicant, that they are going to do some cleanup to the site. Since the site was vacant, had some overgrowth. I think there's a light or two that's kind of leaning a little bit. They're going to kind of clean up and correct all of that as part of this conversion.
All right. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you want to add or say to the Plan Commission?
So I'm Scott Thompson. This is my father, Paul. Bridgman Foods been in operations for 30 years. We're very excited to bring the Wendy's franchise to the Muskego community. We have an architect and construction team on staff that'll work hand in hand with the city to make sure it's up to approval according to Wendy's standards as well. And just very excited to be joining the community. We live right next door in Franklin. My sister lives in Muskego, so we've been asked to bring a Wendy's here for a while and very excited for this opportunity to take over the former Burger King building. So that's all I got.
Welcome. Any comments or questions from the Plan Commission? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to Resolution PC 055, 2021, approval of building site and operation plan amendment for Alpha Plastics Holding LLC located at South A2 West 19362 Apollo Drive, tax key number 2225.999.018.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is for a building site and operation plan amendment in order to construct an additional separate second building on the Alpha Plastics property located in our business park right across the street here. They've stated that they're going to use this space for additional manufacturing and storage space. So currently this site contains a larger building that has had, I think, an addition or two put on it over time. The bulk of the building is like a steel panel building. There are some areas that have some banding of masonry, limited on the sides. The front of the building does have, it's almost like a two-story height, and the first floor is like a masonry material. Anytime someone's looking at doing an additional building on a property, we always want to look at it to see, how does the new building match with what's on site. This property being a little bit unique along with some others because it has two road frontages. The front of the building faces inward to the park and the rear of the building faces Janesville Road. So it is a little bit more visible than some other properties. If it were in the middle of the park surrounded by other big buildings, you might not see what was happening in the back as much. The new building is proposed just basically immediately west of the existing building, so it will be pretty visible. It's not a tiny building. It's got some good height to it as well as some good size. So staff definitely wanted to stress to the development team about things matching. We did kind of propose some things to the development team, but they wanted to proceed this way. So you're going to notice tonight that there are quite a few staff recommendations which are in the resolution. If the Plan Commission agrees with those recommendations, they can leave the resolution as is, and if they disagree, they can obviously amend it as such. Part of the reason that was stated for this proposal is, there is a lot of outdoor storage currently on site. This site is not allowed to have any outdoor storage that's not within a fenced area, screened area. So they do have a fenced area in the rear of the property and on the west area of the property now that is screened with fences with slatting. As far as that goes, as part of this proposal, they definitely need to make sure that all of that outdoor storage is moved to a screened area before occupancy of the new building can be given, because they're in non-compliance right now with all that outdoor storage. As far as the building goes itself, it's about a 10,200 square foot building, 60 by 70, about 21 feet in height. There are 3 square fixed windows facing Apollo Drive with a service door, and then an overhead door on the side facing Janesville Road. Other than that, it's just really a fairly plain steel building. They are noting that the color would be as close of a match as possible to the main building. As was stated, the main building right now, and there is a picture of it in your packet, does include that lower band of masonry on the lower half of the building, and then the upper half is the steel with some more narrow, more vertical type windows. And it's kind of a greenish tannish siding that's on that green siding with more of a tannish brick. As far as the design guide goes in the city, it does look to suggest 50% masonry with 4-sided architecture at the Plan Commission's discretion. Given that it's an outbuilding, or an additional building, I should say, still should look good, especially because its presence being such a large structure and being, right next to the main building and visible from the 2 streets. As far as stormwater goes on site, there are no stormwater facilities specifically shown. They aren't addressing any specific stormwater. As part of a future building permit that will be needed, our engineering team will look to see if there are any kind of stormwater requirements necessary from MSD or DNR. If there are, the applicant would have to meet those, and the resolution is drafted as such. In general, when we typically like to see these expansions, like I said, we like to see the buildings match as much as possible. There was an addition put on the back of the building back in around 2016 that faces Janesville Road, and one of the things we noticed in our due diligence here was that addition was specifically noted as being told it wouldn't be an exact match, as well as the Plan Commission required a match. In looking at the property, it doesn't match. I mean, it's close, but not close enough to be a match by any means. So as part of this resolution, it is also made note that the existing building, that addition in 2016 that was required by the Plan Commission to be matching the building exactly, does need to be painted to match that exact building, which would carry over to this new building having to match those both also as far as colors go. Second issue, like I mentioned, was outdoor storage. There's quite a bit of outdoor storage on this site that isn't allowable, including there's been some personal storage. You could see like just boats or collector cars and things like that. If they're on site, that's fine. They just need to be within the fenced enclosed area or within one of the buildings itself. There also was refuse and recycling containers on site that aren't screened, which are not allowed to be unscreened on site. So as part of their future permit, they will have to propose either a specific refuse recycling enclosure that has some kind of complementary colors to the building, or they can put them once again permanently behind the existing fencing if they would choose to do so. That's noted in the resolution also. So the specifics that we have in the resolution relating to the design would be that the southern side of the new building must match the colors and materials of the existing structure, including adding a masonry covering over the first floor area and changing the windows to be more of a match to the existing building. We have it noted that the color of the metal siding and roofing must be an exact match within the existing building and to that addition on the original building. We have noted that the roof overhangs on the new building must match the depth of the roof overhangs on the existing building. That's something we typically have asked with the Plan Commission before. We have noted that any kind of outdoor equipment, rooftop equipment, wall-mounted equipment, ground-mounted equipment, whether it's HVAC, whether it's something for their process, any kind of equipment transformers must be screened from view, either with something with like dense fencing or dense landscaping, which will have to be shown at permitting time. Signage would need permits, bollards matching building color, typical things. If they want any kind of signage, they will have to make sure they get signage approval. I think there was a couple signs in site that may have been unapproved before that we would have to make sure get, applied for and permitted also. And that any new lighting would be required to meet all city specs and have to come through the city for approval. So staff was recommending approval subject to those additional items in the resolution.
Yes, please come up.
I'm Dan Schmidt with Burbeck Builders on behalf of Tim Hogan and Alpha Plastics Holdings. First of all, thank you for letting us on this was a late entry, and I apologize for the lack of all the information because it was I think a 24-hour turnaround. So I do actually have an updated grading plan from Mike Casey and Southeast Survey. Just to go through a few things on what you're talking about, I know the main points that you just mentioned, Adam. The rear side of the building, yes, you can only see about the top quarter over dense vegetation and about an 8-foot fence from Janesville. I agree you can see it. I agree there are different building colors. I didn't know this in the plan, but I did bring that up to the owner, and he has it in the works to paint the whole other building, actually to match the new building because it is getting faded. So that's in his plan already. I'd like to note that. As far as, so we can go over that, the next thing would be is the stone on the front side of the building. I want to note a couple things in the area and what you guys have allowed in the past. The building has actually stone and 2 different types of block. So in doing this and asking what stone, we need to be very decisive on that. If the Planning Commission is going to do that, we need to know what it would be. Now, I agree with the Planning Commission on that you're asked to match like systems. But I want to bring up Forefront right across the road. That is an all-front brick building, and from Racine Avenue, which is the front, their brand new construction building is all steel, all white. So that absolutely doesn't fit into what the Planning Commission has approved in the past, or what is suggested with 50% stone on the front of the building. They are planning on doing the dense fencing back to the building, so there will be nothing as far as backwards. I think I drew it on the plan. But other than that, yeah, they're just planning on making it a bigger, better building. On the facts of the outside storage, I will note that to them. Obviously, I'm just the builder, so I don't have any control of what they store, don't store outside. I can relay all of those messages, and if they are laid out, we'll actually absolutely have to follow them. The last thing is just pretty much we'd like a clear, concise plan on moving forward. And if you have any questions, obviously, we've been here a long time, and we're definitely willing to work with the Planning Commission to get it done, as well as the owner is too. He's looking to get a building as soon as possible. Steel was out about 5 months when he really wanted to start this. So we put it into play, and he's just looking to get moving as soon as possible. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Wait. Questions? Is it just dry? Is it just gonna be dry storage in there, or what's their?
So as far as the exterior, all it is they have plastic extruding machinery.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it is for storage because he has lack of storage. He is planning on moving a couple of his lines to that building. All of the interior or all the forklift traffic, everything will be behind the building per se, so it won't be anything facing the forward. One note is I do have updated drawings. I couldn't get them in soon enough to get in. They are lengthening the windows to match. So they are exact match of what's on the building. Sorry, I didn't mention that, of the existing building. So it will match to a T.
So you said they're going to be using that for additional lines for forklift traffic?
Behind the buildings inside the fenced-in area to move product from one building to the next, and storage, because that's what they're really lacking.
No, what I'm thinking is fork trucks backing up and making noise. If you look, there's a home straight across the plan there. I look at that home every day, so you can see where I can relate on here for sound.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess my concern would be any additional traffic or sound in second and third shifts in that area, finding ways of minimizing that.
Okay, I agree with that. I know they do run 2 or 3 shifts.
Right.
Preemptively. I don't know exactly what their whole plan is. Like I said, I gathered all the information pretty quick. But yes, I can address that as well. Any other questions?
So they're going to run fork trucks 12 months of the year outside with?
Yes, I actually know a couple of people that do it on paved areas. They'll plow it and they run them in and out. Like I said, this isn't it's mainly for storage of products. So they're not going to be running 24/7 back and forth It's more, he's moving one line into there. When the product is done, it goes out. More
Out as in
correct.
to the end
Yeah,
user.
the raw plastic comes in little pellets, and it's like
Yeah.
an ejection, and then that's moving the product out. So I'm guessing it's more gonna be during the day, not 24/7 at night.
So would they be
traffic.
adding silos to this building as well?
I don't believe there's no plan to add any more silos as far as I know.
Okay.
They're just gonna get more deliveries of those raw materials of what they
Pellets,
have.
okay.
Correct.
With the elevations I see on the drawings, I don't see any docks. And with the amount of production they're going, and I know that this company personally, over the years I've done business, and I don't see any docks, to load all those Gaylords full of material. Is there any plans for docks on this application?
No, this isn't, this is, the Gaylords of material will come into the existing building and get transferred over by a pipe, if any.
Okay.
It's not gonna be as far as raw material coming into that building, put out and then back
So any
through.
production on the new production lines that's going to be in the westerly building will be going back into the
Correct.
east building and being shipped out of the docks from there?
Correct.
Incoming
Okay.
and outgoing are from the existing.
From the
building.
existing building?
Correct, yes. And then obviously finished product or the bigger molded plastic pieces will come out the back end and load it onto a truck via their docks they have already.
Okay. And the reason I brought that up is that there's a lot of extra traffic with that type of, loading, but if it's going back into the main building and they're going from the docks already, that's going to eliminate a lot of that noise.
I agree.
Any other questions?
Just a point of clarification. So just to be clear, right now, the, what's being proposed is that even though the elevations don't reflect it, basically there's gonna be 50% masonry around the entire perimeter of the building and the windows are gonna match the same style.
I think the intention was only 50% on the south-facing side because the other building does not have it on all sides. Yes, the guy talks about 50%, but there's usually more emphasis typically on matching. So the idea that the bulk of the other building, like the back side, the west side, I don't think have any masonry. I think the east side might have a teeny bit, but very minimal. The bulk of it in the part you're gonna see, which is that south-facing side, that's the side that staff was the most concerned with having that matching band height. But the plan commission can discuss that, obviously.
Okay,
Yeah, we have noted, the southern side of the building must match colors and materials of the existing structure, including masonry covering on that first floor area. That's how it's worded.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, and Adam, you spoke of the different screening that's already on the Janesville side. Some of the trees that are in there are a little taller. You got the I'm not sure if it's an 8-foot fence. I thought it was a 6-foot with the PDS slats in it. And if that's a concern, is there anything in the request to have any extra arborvitaes or anything there to get the sound barrier and or visual blockage?
That isn't part of their request. It could be a discussion. The tricky part with a lot of these users here, and we've run into the same thing with the user to the west with G&G, is there are some pretty significant, We Energies, Webco, American Transmission Company, whoever it is, easements, because there are some of those larger lines there. So it's something that if it was requested, we could look at. The tricky part is we've required them in some other spots before, and then the power companies have come down and cut them down, which is unfortunate. So we weren't too concerned. It's just the idea of, that's why having a good color match is really important. So at least it looks cohesive. That was our biggest
Isn't
concern.
there quite an elevation change between, there's that bike trail in the back of that and what I'd call the elevation of the, like G&G and this location?
Yeah, like this site does sit lower.
It does, it sits
Yeah.
lower by a few feet.
What can you see then when you're looking?
What's a 21-foot tall building, so you're going to see some of it, but that's why the back, we're not really concerned other than
Half
color.
of it?
I've got a picture if you want to see it. I took some pictures today on my way in, so if you want to see them.
You can, but I
Yeah,
mean, from.
half of it?
Yeah, about half.
All right.
And it
So-
depends on the time of year,
so-
it's this time of year, it's more screened
The
because.
fence is a good deal, but you probably aren't
The
going to see
fence
the.
doesn't-
And there is already a fence on part of that area, so.
There is a fence, but it
Yeah,
doesn't screen much.
so let's make sure they have a nice fence and they put everything in it, but everything above there is what our people across the street, those driving by are going to see.
Right.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? Thank you. Yep, thank you.
I think the only question maybe we should clarify, like the applicant mentioned, is if the plan commission's in agreement with masonry, I'm looking at the photo of the existing building. Did you mention that there's more than one? I mean, on the photo, it's kind of hard to tell, and I forget from when I was out there because it's all the same color. I think it's two different types of a brick, right? On the front, the corners are one type and the centers are different. I mean, I know it looks real similar, but.
Correct, and then the sign actually has cultured stone on it.
Yeah, and the sign, we're not worried about the sign, but I think, Planning Commission, I don't want to speak for you, but are we comfortable just at least saying matching one? Like I said, the building has a little depth to it. We're not making him do that. If you look at the photo that's in the supplement on page 28, I think it is in the PDF, are we just fine if they match one of the two, masonry materials that's on that front portion? They both look very similar in my opinion.
Yeah.
So you could propose either one on the updated plans. Okay. I don't think we need to change anything, just we can clarify that for the record.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Anything else you want to clarify?
No, I think it's good.
No other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. There is no miscellaneous business. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third, fourth, fifth.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:16. Thank you.